Alright, so if we want to get started with Node, the first thing we should probably do is get it installed. A quick note, if you're using a Mac and you're used to installing packages with Homebrew, I would just actually say to avoid installing Node with Homebrew. They've had problems in the past with something called NPM, which is something that we want to just have installed with Node. And they've had some problems with that installation process. I think that they're fixed now, but it's up in the air enough that I would say just go ahead, go to the website, and install the package from there no matter what OS you're on, and all of those packages work really well. So that being said, let's just go over to nodejs.org, and you can see there's a big bright green install button, and I'm pretty sure that's going to try to guess your OS. It's doing that for me because I'm on a Mac. But if you would rather have more control, like I usually do, just click on the Downloads button. And here you're going to see installers for each of the main OSs. And then if you know what you're doing and you really want to have a lot more control, you can actually see they have all kinds of downloads for you. You can even fork the whole project on GitHub and install it from the real raw source code, which you definitely don't want to do unless you know what you're doing. Most people are going to use these three links right here. So on the Mac, you'll get the regular looking installer package, and it'll walk you through the steps. You can just go ahead and use all the defaults. It's totally fine. And then once it's installed on any OS, you're going to have to make sure that this last line here happened. Now this may already be set up depending on your computer, but what this means is the path is where your computer looks whenever you're trying to run a command from the command line. The computer's going to look through this list of directories to try to find that command. And so node and npm are two commands that live kind of at this bin directory, and we want to make sure that user local bin is in our path. To do that on the Mac, we'll jump over to terminal, and the quickest way to find out if we have a command available in our path is to use the which command. So if I say which node, it's going to look and see, can I find the node command in the path? And if it does, it returns the path to where that node command is. So it's in user local bin where we expect. Now if it wasn't able to find that command, it doesn't give you an error message. We'll make up a command just to show it, node blah, and you can see it just prints nothing. So if you didn't find node, that's all it would show. So to fix that problem, we have to actually adjust the path. And we can do that right on the command line. We can use export, and we're going to say path as if it's a new variable. And then we'll say user local bin. And that's great, except now we have to add in the previous path or else we break all the other commands on our computer. So we put a colon and then we write $path, and that will include whatever was already set as the path. So we're just basically prefixing our new folder into the path. Now, we don't need to do this on my computer because mine already worked, but if yours was having a problem, that's one way around it. Now we also want to check for npm, so we'll do which npm, and it's also in the same place as I expected it to be, so that's good. And so we have node and npm installed, so we're all set with that. And now that it's installed, let's just talk a little bit about what these commands do. If I run the node command by itself, it opens up something called a REPL, which is REPL, or read eval print loop. It's a fancy way of saying it's a place where you can just type node commands in. So if I do a very simple command, I'm going to do console.log and then say node is fun, and hit enter, it's going to print out two things. Now the first line that you see here on this command line output is something called the standard out, and that's what console.log prints to. So whenever you do console.log, or if you've ever written a bash script and you've written echo on the command line, that's going to be coming out on something called the standard out. And anytime you log to that, it will print it out on the first line of the return in the REPL. Now if you were to run a similar type of command just in a node file, this would also be printed out on the command line if you ran that file on the command line. And we'll talk about that in a second. This second line is what's kind of interesting about the REPL, is it will actually show you the return value of the function. So we just ran a function, it's the log method on the console object, And that method happens to return nothing, so we get undefined. If the function returned something, we would see what it returned in this kind of gray color here. And that's actually very helpful for testing things out. To exit from the REPL, you do not type exit. I always do that, so that's a good little reminder. You do not type exit to exit. It won't work. You do Control-C. It will say Control-C again to quit, so you do it again, and then it takes you back out to where you were. Now, if you want to run, like I was saying, if you want to run that same type of JavaScript, console.log, but put that in a file. So let's pretend like we have a file called file.js. You can run node file.js, and whatever was in that file will run. So actually, we could even do echo and then say console.log node is fun. And we'll put that into a file called file.js. And now I'll show you here ls-la. And actually, let's clear that. And I'll do ls-la and we'll grep for file.js just to show you that it's there. And then if we do node file.js, you can see that it's logging out node is fun to, remember what I said, is called standard out. The only other command we haven't talked about is npm. And like I said before, that's the node package manager. We're going to talk about that in a later video though, so we'll just forget about that for now. So that's a very quick walkthrough of Node. In the next video, we're going to take another quick crash course looking at the command line in general. In order to use Node throughout this course, we're going to be on the command line quite a bit. So if you're not comfortable with it, we'll just go through a couple of the most common commands. If you're comfortable with the command line, you can go ahead and skip the next video and move right on to the next one.